Here we go, episode 121 of the Hardline Sports Talk. I'm Michael Merlo. That's John Michael Messeri. We're over the computer today, but it'll still be a fantastic episode. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, liking our and following our social media as always, and just staying connected with us. JM, we'll start it off. How you doing tonight?
Doing good, man. Feel a little old school right now. Hasn't been too long. I think maybe 6 months since we did this last.
Yeah, I was gonna say
But
it's been a while, but not like as long as it feels.
yeah, I mean, episode 100 was online, which is kind of crazy to think about. But we're back. We're back at the roots.
Yeah, we're comfortable at home. I'm in pajamas at
Look
the
at that.
moment.
Look at that.
So
Yeah, my shirt doesn't even match my pants.
yeah, we're not worried about looks tonight.
Yeah, no, we're good. Did I
All right.
did I freeze up on your end, or am I good?
Yeah, a little bit, but we're fine.
All right.
Let's start off here with Bill Belichick, obviously, right? I mean, the amount of coaching changes around football, it's actually overwhelming. All week, I've been a little disconnected, and I'm trying to follow everything. It was overwhelming to try and keep up with all that happened this week. So we're going to touch all the coaching carousel situation because I personally love all of that stuff. But let's start off with Bill Belichick. Okay, obviously now we know he will not be coming back. I mean, how many times did we touch on it? The possibility that he will not be the New England Patriots head coach beyond the 2023 season. And it actually came true after, him and Robert Kraft mutually agreed to part ways. But J.M. Belichick is no longer able to terrorize the Jets in the division.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. That's what I was thinking immediately when I saw that he was retired. Is I was like, oh, finally, it's over. Yeah, I'm still surprised, to be honest with you. I mean, after all the headlines, and we've heard stuff about the Patriots for years now, even going back to Brady's days with the Garoppolo drama and whatever was going on between Brady and Kraft and Belichick, and it was just hard to imagine that Bill Belichick would actually be done in New England after all that he's done there and all the massive success he's had. But it happened. Yeah, like I said, I'm still surprised about it, but I got to give the Patriots credit. I think the way that this is all going is pretty peacefully. I haven't seen any really animosity in that press conference today. Kind of confirmed it for me. It was Bill Belichick isn't exactly going to give you a hug and kiss and bake you some cookies,
They
but
almost did.
he almost did. But it was pretty ceremonial. I'll give them credit.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't expect it to go any other way, right? There was rumor that his longtime girlfriend had dirt on him. I don't know if you remember this report, but that him and that blonde broke up.
Yeah.
And she had dirt on him apparently, and she was going to out him, whatever I guess he had did in the past, but nothing ever came of that.
I bet
But
you
yeah,
that girlfriend doesn't know how to scheme a defense, though.
no, she doesn't. And that's really
You don't
what
know.
I want to get to here because and I think it's obvious now that every NFL fan, if you really know what you're talking about in terms of football, you realize, okay, Belichick can still coach a football team. The problem is he became the GM, and when he became the GM, that's when it went to bleep. So you can watch his defensive schemes, though. You can watch what he did even this year. He lost his two best players early on. He lost Christian Gonzalez, who looked like he was going to be the defensive rookie of the year. That's how good he played in the first month of the year. And Matthew Judon, who was his best pass rusher, loses both of those guys. And still defensively, after a couple of hiccups, getting used to playing without those guys, that defense was fantastic. So Belichick can still coach. I have no doubt about that. But the problem becomes now, does he get the full power of being general manager as well?
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think what didn't work out in New England is, yeah, you're right. He did become the GM and he had too much say. He didn't have any good drafts. And, we could go over some of the picks, the N'Keal Harry and the Cole Strange and then this and that, and the guys that he just had a swing and a miss on. But that Belichick's way as being the GM wasn't always finding the best talent. I think any former Patriot will tell you that it was more about finding guys that fit his culture, that don't make mistakes, that are disciplined football players. That's what he looked for. And it's impressive. It's corny to think that he doesn't want to tell, he wants football guys, but I'll give the guy credit. He's got 6 Super Bowl rings, so he could kind of do whatever the hell he wants. Maybe that just is, it kind of ran out because it's hard to sustain a culture like that forever. And when you have a guy like Tom Brady leave and you have Gronk leave and you have all these guys leave, sustaining that tough Patriot way for that long is difficult to do. And I think that's why it eventually came to a crumble the way it did these past couple of years.
Well, it's also a different era of football because you have to be able to throw the ball. You need a legitimate quarterback that can push the ball downfield. You can't just win on special teams, running the football and defense. You can't do that anymore. You have to have some creativity on offense, and he hasn't had those guys, and he hasn't had the skill players. So, and that's on him because that's on drafting and player personnel, and that falls on Bill Belichick, who's also the general manager. So, yeah, his style just, I don't think works right now in terms of being the general manager and the head coach. And how many times have we seen this fail? When the head coach, becomes the most powerful guy in the organization and is now the general manager, it fails. I mean, and we're going to talk about Vrabel in a minute. Vrabel wanted that kind of power in the Athletic article I read today, about really the getting down to the nitty gritty of why he was let go. He wanted that kind of power. It doesn't work. I know he's the greatest coach of all time, and he probably deserves it. It doesn't work. And his style, it just ran out.
It's two completely different positions. I know Belichick had an economics background and a good understanding of the salary cap, but listen, talent evaluation, trading, free agent signings, scheming the offense, leading the team. Like these are all things that can't be intertwined together and be A+ grades across the board. It's just humanly impossible at that point. I mean, look at, I'm going to jump sports here, but look at Phil Jackson, who was thought to be and still is thought to be the greatest coach in NBA history with his 11 championships or whatever the hell he has. And then he comes over to New York and everybody's all excited, and he's maybe one of the worst GMs we've ever seen. So it's two completely different things. And I don't know what's going to happen if he goes to when he goes to an organization, which is still crazy to me. I really thought that it was just New England and right off into the sunset, considering his age, and considering everything he succeeded. But I think he really wants Shula's record. I think he wants to be the winningest coach in NFL history. And I guess we can get into it now of where does he go. The rumors are to be Atlanta, which is I'm a bit surprised about. I thought Washington was the favorite when we would talk about it during the course of the regular season, but Atlanta is an idea, and I don't know what their interest is. I think they're stupid if they're not interested, but I think the Chargers, like, you gotta look over there. Belichick needs a great quarterback, and that's the best one on the board if with head coach openings.
It's funny. When you look at some of the coaches around the league and the general managers around the league, Kyle Shanahan hired John Lynch, right?
Yeah.
And because Shanahan was there first and he, was part of the search to find a GM. And Shanahan ultimately has all of the power. Lynch is obviously the general manager and ahead of him, but Shanahan has the most power in that organization. I think where Belichick has to go, he needs to go to a general manager that you have a partnership. And maybe Belichick ultimately has final say, but you need a legitimate general manager that will fight you on things. That's not just a yes man. So the Chargers need a general manager and they need a head coach. That makes sense. The Commanders who are out, they would have made sense. You mentioned Atlanta. Does Atlanta make sense? They have a general manager in place, and Arthur Blank is a very, hands-on owner. Does that make sense for Belichick? Is he going to want to go to a place where there is another boss that is complete top dog?
It's a tough decision. If I'm picking between, I'm going to take the Chargers out of it, okay? If I'm picking between Atlanta and Washington, if I'm Belichick, I think that it's such an easy decision to go with Washington. Yep. You have the draft capital. I know Belichick is getting up there in age, but if he's signed and become a head coach, this isn't a one and done type of thing. So Washington's sitting there with a premium pick. They're the second overall on the board. You're actually jumping your New England Patriots to go one spot in front of them. And you can get a Drake May or a Caleb Williams, however the draft shakes up. And you have a new ownership group and you have a chance to really, change the course of this organization. We're talking about the most dysfunctional organization in football. When you take everything into account, you take success, culture, just drama in general. The Washington Commanders have been the most dysfunctional organization in football over the last decade plus. So go to Washington, get your stud rookie quarterback, and become the man in another city.
They have a ton of cap space as well. That's one of the three most intriguing jobs, in my opinion. Attractive jobs. That's the word I want to use.
Mhm.
That's one of the three most attractive jobs you can have that's available at the moment. I don't know where New England ranks on that. We'll talk about a candidate that I believe should be the favorite for that in a little bit. And I think you agree as well. But back to where he's going to go. I mean, I'm trying to think of the other openings. I
But
think
I gotta say, go ahead, go ahead.
there's going to be a team that drops out of the playoffs, JM, that I
Yeah,
think
thank
definitely
you.
comes in and hires them.
That's exactly what I wanted to say is, right now we're talking about the teams that are looking for a head coach, but there's going to be a team that drops out of the playoffs. Like, well, we're just going to talk hypotheticals here. Anything's going to happen this weekend. If Dallas loses to Green Bay at home,
Mm-hmm.
McCarthy's gone.
Yes.
And honestly, like I feel like Jerry Jones would be upset that they lost, but at the same time, be like, oh, I go get Bill Belichick now. Like that is 100%. I would put money on that if they lose
And
that's
they're
going to happen.
and they're losing Dan Quinn, the guy that ultimately was supposed to be the, guy that replaces McCarthy.
Yeah.
Quinn's going to Seattle.
Yeah.
So most
Yep.
likely. And it
Yep.
makes perfect sense for him to go to Seattle. So you're losing the guy that you would have replaced McCarthy with. Yeah, that makes sense. JM, I'm going to say it. I've seen this float around all social media all day. Philadelphia. I mean, it makes too much sense.
Yeah.
It
Yep.
makes too much sense. If you lose to Tampa Bay, okay, after the season you
I
had
think they're
last year
going
and the
to.
start. See, and I don't think so. So
We'll talk
I
about it
hope
later.
honestly,
I think they're going to.
I hope they win now, because if this becomes a serious
Yeah.
situation where they do move off of Sirianni, boy, do I not want Bill Belichick with that team and that offense, those
Yeah.
offensive weapons and that quarterback and those, players on defense.
Mhm.
That makes too much sense.
But I think even, we'll talk about Philly, we talk about Dallas. There's a couple other teams that, maybe encounter a disaster this weekend and their coaches are out of town. But how about the teams that aren't even in it right now that have head coaches and then they wake up this morning, their owner sees that Bill Belichick's been fired. I'm going to use the Jets as an example. I think that's a completely unrealistic and it's not going to happen. But a team like the Jets, where maybe your coach, the seat isn't hot, but the seat's warm, and you see Bill Belichick out there looking to become a head coach of his next NFL team, and how can you not entertain the possibility?
Well, that's a lead into one of my next points. The Chicago Bears are keeping Matt Eberflus. Why?
Oh,
Look at the
mistake.
amount of coaches available. Not even just the guys that have been let go, like Vrabel, Belichick, Pete Carroll, the defensive guys, the offensive guys. For a team that's most likely picking number one overall, makes no sense. You have all these fantastic options, and you're sticking with this guy. I mean, the Jets too. I mean, Salah's, in going into year 4 now, it has not been good, and you're sticking with this guy because Rodgers wants him.
Well,
When
I'll
you
tell
have a
you what,
guy like Pete
you're
Carroll or Mike Vrabel available, are you kidding me?
you're sticking with Salah. You better be right. Like it is, if you're wrong, you got
Yeah,
problems.
it doesn't make sense to me. Some of these teams, and you're right. You wake up today and you say, look at the people available to go get it. It's concerning that some of these GMs are going to stick with their head coaches. You mentioned the Jets. I mentioned the Bears. I mean, Eberflus.
Sorry for the interruption.
How it Eberflus, to me, that's the biggest. This is the biggest offseason in Bears history, and
Yeah.
you're sticking with the guy that might be the guy you don't know yet, and you're going to fire
Yeah.
his entire staff.
It's just
That's a
dumb.
team that can't get anything right.
It's so dumb. I wanna save it for when we talk about Fields because I got a lot to say about that situation. So
Sure.
I'm just gonna bite my tongue right now, but yeah, mistake.
Yeah, it's definitely a mistake. Let's move off, though, of Belichick, and let's go to another legend who, the day before Belichick, we learn is going to be parting ways with the Patriots. Nick Saban retires from
Yep.
Alabama. He lost, and we were off last week, but, he loses the playoff game to Michigan. And, this wasn't Alabama's best team. He would have told you that. They lose. It's a weird way for him to go out, JM, in a year where maybe next year the team would have been a lot better and you would have had a
Yeah.
legitimate shot at the playoff, at the championship, excuse me. It's a weird ending for a legend.
It's a very weird ending. It's actually a proud year for Saban. Looking back, you see, you expect an Alabama team to just be championship contenders every year, and you'll look at this year and say, "Oh, all right, fell short in the Rose Bowl, didn't make it to the national championship." But this is a team that, I mean, had an uphill climb ever since week 3 of the season, and exceeded expectations or overachieved in terms of their roster and the firepower that they had on it. So it was a good year for Saban. I am shocked, to be honest. I'm more shocked than the Belichick news. At least we heard about Belichick to be like, oh, he might be
It
gone
was a
this year. But
possibility.
Saban retiring is really out of nowhere. The one thing that I'm shocked about, talking about the two of these, because they are very intertwined together. Their coaching career started with each other, and they've always been connected. Nick Saban's the same age as Bill Belichick. They're
Looks
both like
younger.
72 years old. He looks way younger than Belichick. I thought Saban was maybe early 60s.
Oh, you think Belichick looks younger?
I think Belichick looks older.
Yes, okay. That's I thought. All right, I
Mhm.
mixed up your words. Yeah, Saban definitely looks younger than Belichick. Although I don't know if you saw that video of Saban walking into the office today, which for whatever reason you're in the office 8 o'clock after you retire, the day after you retire. But see the way he walks? Like he walks like an old man, which I
Yeah, he
found weird.
does. He does. My TV's
Yeah.
off right now, and the sound bar is making noises.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, no, please. Working from home. These are the challenges. But anyway, back to Saban now. I think the most interesting part about this whole situation, and we could talk about Saban's career forever. I think it's who replaces Nick Saban now at Alabama. And I'm going to see something you might find crazy, but this is not a job I would want. This is a job that I would kind of back off of in the
Shoes
first
too
year.
big to fill.
It's too big of shoes to fill. Unless you're hiring a guy that is, I mean, the perfect coach for Alabama in terms of he has a history of winning. He's a
Yeah.
really good recruiter. And I think being down south, having a connection to being down south,
Mm-hmm.
you can't hire a guy that's been, in the Big Ten his entire career
Yeah.
and then expect him to go to the South and succeed. So I think that's what, I think Brian Kelly, I like Brian Kelly and I love the hire, and I'm kind of backing off now. Like, I think Kelly in LSU might not work out anymore just because I
Yeah.
think of the personality and the person.
Well, I think that this isn't really going to be a guy who's connected to Alabama in the past, like a former quarter. Like, I don't think you're going to see like a Bill O'Brien go to coach Alabama.
No.
I think we see this a lot in football, in college football. I think you're just going to see a guy make a jump from one program to Alabama, because who is going to turn down that job? Now, I don't think you're going to see Kirby Smart jump from Georgia to Alabama. If he
No.
did, that would just be stupid. You're basically like, it's the same exact thing. But I think that's what you're eventually gonna see. And I think you're gonna see some coaches that you're never gonna see it, but I'm sure there's coaches around there like your Lincoln Rileys and whoever else that maybe took some controversial jumps from one program to the other, kind of be salty right now to say, man, I wish that Alabama job was available when I did this.
Maybe not Riley. I think USC is the perfect spot for him, but yeah, there's going to be guys that say it was a
Riley's
missed
style doesn't
opportunity.
really fit Bama. I get it.
No, it doesn't. He doesn't have a defense. He needs a
No,
defense to win in the
no,
SEC, and he'll
no.
find that. Oh, they're going to the Big Ten. You'll still find that out very shortly in the Big Ten.
Watch it
But
be some like left field, like Matt Rule goes from the
it's going to be
Nebraska.
Kalen DeBoer from Washington. I put a lot of money on that right now. I mean,
Okay.
DeBoer's had success everywhere he's went. He's had, two really, really good seasons, and obviously almost a perfect season this year, losing to Michigan in the final. To me, it's obvious it's going to be Kalen DeBoer. I think their first choice was Dan Lanning from Oregon. He said no. He told them no. And he posted a video today. Oregon posted a video today, basically telling his team that he's staying. It's not going to be Lanning. And I don't think that would have worked either. I
It's
think it's
smart.
going to be DeBoer.
If you're at a program like that, making good, I'm sure he's the coach of Oregon. He's making good money.
Big time
It's
money.
smart to just stay there. It's too much of a risk. I think you're gonna have to get a guy who's gonna, need to take a big leap here. I don't, or maybe a guy whose seat's getting a little hot at his current job to come over. I don't think somebody with a safe, secure job with a school that pays them good money and a decent program is gonna take that position.
It's funny. Dabo Sweeney was always like the favorite to replace him forever. And there's a buyout. It's more of a buyout if he was to go to Alabama. It's like
Wow.
there's more of a, it's just Alabama in his
Yeah.
contract. I don't think it's going to be Dabo. He hasn't had much success the past few years, but It's very interesting to see who it's going to be. I don't know who it's going to be. We're obviously going to be talking about Alabama, though, and Nick Saban,
Mhm.
just, a legend. And it's crazy that. Do you think it's coincidence it's back-to-back days here or no?
Yeah, I do. I mean, maybe they were in talks that, you know, saying I'm gonna retire. I assume they're friends. I think it's basically coincidence, though.
All right, well, let's move on here. I want to talk about Pete Carroll, who also has some sort of connection to both of these
Yeah,
guys,
yeah.
especially to Belichick.
Let's get another eulogy in here.
Yeah, Pete Carroll, he's out at Seattle. This is the most shocking one I think of every coach that has been let go thus
Yeah.
far, other than obviously Saban, who goes out on his own terms. But in the NFL, this is the most shocking to me. Seahawks were disappointing this year. There's no doubt about it. But I don't know. I think it would have had to take a catastrophically bad year for me to say, oh, you know what? I'm getting rid of Pete Carroll and, you got to move on because the grass is not always greener on the other side. As much as I believe I like the replacement.
Yeah. Um, Now I'm hearing that it's a potential advisor role for Pete Carroll. I don't really know what that means. I think that's weird. Like, if you get rid of the guy, you can't keep him in the building because, like, everybody's gonna be like, "Oh, hey, coach," and then see their real coach and be like, "Oh, hey, coach." Like, you can't. This isn't like a stepmom living with the mom kind of, like, you can't. You got to just get rid of one,
Rip the
please.
Band-Aid off.
Exactly. It's a shock. I mean, Carroll, I think you ask a Seahawks fan, you'll maybe get some mixed opinions. Most of them will be positive, but unfortunately, the highlight of the guy's career is the 1 yard line incident in the Super Bowl against the Patriots. But nevertheless, I mean, he did have. I feel like he was one of the more over criticized coaches over the course of his career.
Mhm.
Seattle had a couple years where they were it seemed like they were underachieving because of Russell Wilson and because of the talent they had and the Legion of Boom and that great defense and everything. But that offensive line deteriorated over the years in Seattle. It seemed like they could never figure it out, and it always held them back. And I'll tell you what, Russ going over and leaving Seattle and underperforming the way he has, I think, is good for Pete Carroll's legacy.
Well, I think last season was just great for Pete Carroll's legacy.
Yeah.
Obviously, you take Geno Smith, and I think Shane Waldron had a lot to do with that, the offensive coordinator, and the weapons they have as well. But yeah, a lot of credit to Pete Carroll for what he was able to do last season, and even a little bit this year. I mean, still, I think it's as good as the team is, they lack talent in certain areas, and they're still competitive, and they're still a team that's over 500. So give them credit for sure. You mentioned it, possible advisor role. He fits to me in a couple of really good spots of teams available. One of them being the Chargers. If there was a guy, and it makes your offensive coordinator higher, very important. I'm not a huge defensive coach guy, but if there's one guy other than Vrabel I would hire over there, I think my number one choice would be Carroll, just
Mhm.
fixing the culture of that team. And I think Richard Sherman actually tweeted this. Fix the culture, fix the issues, and he would actually get people in the seats, he said. I don't know about that, but I think culture-wise, I think Pete Carroll will be a perfect match for the Chargers.
The names getting thrown around in this coaching carousel are just ridiculous. The fact that we're talking about Carroll, Belichick, and Vrabel right now. Yeah, it makes sense. I think that Chargers head coach opening has to be the most attractive one solely because of Justin Herbert. Now,
Yeah.
you could talk about what I said before with Washington having that premium pick, but I mean, anytime you can go as a head coach and have a franchise quarterback sitting there waiting for you the first day you walk through the door, boy, does it make your job a lot easier. So, agreed. I think that Carroll would be a good fit there. Um, I don't want to go crazy here. I know Belichick's amazing as a coach. He's got a great track record, but I really do think the top of the list right now is Vrabel of the available head coaches. Just from a
Wow.
stamp, just from a standpoint of I don't know how long Belichick's going to give you. Is this guy really going to coach until he's 80 years old? Like, that's pretty insane. And to be honest, I mean, he's got this old school mentality to him, and it started to deteriorate in New England over the past couple of years. And coming into a new building and trying to implement that hard ass Bill Belichick old school way that was so successful, but you really need to buy into. And they always talk about the sacrifices, and the players basically hate him while they're playing for him. And then after their careers say, oh, you know what? We appreciated coach for that. Is that going to work in the modern day going into a new organization? I'm not sure.
I think learning about Vrabel the past couple of days now, and even over the last week, like I don't think Vrabel's that much different of a guy. I mean, he obviously played for Belichick. He won with Belichick. He went over there for the Ring of Honor ceremony and, just praised the Patriot way and praised what they do in New England. And that rubbed the owner of the Titans the wrong way. And it was part of the reason why they let him go, just his love for New England. I really like Vrabel. I do. He's one of my favorite coaches in the league. And I would put him over Carroll, but I can't sit here and put him over Belichick. I'm not saying he's a wannabe Belichick, but I'm saying I think their styles are probably similar. If I'm in the room, I think that would be the conclusion I would draw.
Am I freezing up? Am I good?
Yeah, we're good now.
I'm still freezing up. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I just think the Titans are stupid for getting rid of him. I think the Titans basically screwed their organization over about 2 years ago when they traded AJ Brown, and that was a big deal. It was apparently Vrabel was against that. He did not want them to get rid of AJ Brown, and you think he was right? I mean, Treylon Burks is going to be, it seems like, out of football in the next couple of years. I mean, he was not only, he had a solid rookie year, and you were actually thinking, not, oh, that we got a future number one here, but this guy could play a little bit. He could play a little bit. And this year, I mean, I think he was hurt a little bit, but even when he was playing, nothing from the guy, just an absolute surefire bust for the Titans. And if I'm Vrabel, I'm leaving and I'm laughing. I'm saying, told you so. And I'll go get myself another job and maybe a better quarterback like a Justin Herbert or wherever he ends up. But I think it's the betting odds are certainly in the favor of Mike Vrabel will be a head coach of a football team next year.
Oh, 100%. And, I think he's another guy that I would sit there and evaluate my coach a little bit harder. I'd, take a microscope and, really start looking there.
Yeah. The Bears are just so, can we segue into the Fields thing? Because I got to just rip on the Bears, please.
Yeah, that's fine. I feel like everybody's beating a dead horse with the Fields thing, but yeah, they're the most interesting team of the offseason.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know you put your TikTok out there, but we haven't gotten to talk about it on the podcast. To me, the decision is I agree with you 100%. The decision is easy. You draft Caleb Williams and you trade Justin Fields. And there's a couple key reasons why. Justin Fields is a talented quarterback. Okay. He's not a top 10 arm in the league. He's a talented guy with good legs and a solid arm. But number one, he's due for a contract very soon. Mm-hmm. And these quarterbacks, I don't know if everybody's been looking around. These guys are getting a lot of money right now. And he's going to ask for more than Daniel Jones money, which was $40 million a year. And I'm sure he's going to be asking for a ton of guarantees. And he knows how quarterback thirsty this organization is. And he's going to use that to his advantage. Why the hell would you give this guy a third offensive coordinator, a new contract, and just the talent he is alone? Why would you go through all of that when you could just say, "Oop, reset button. Let me go get the, in the conversations with your Peyton Mannings and your Andrew Lucks and your Trevor Lawrence in terms of quarterback prospects, Caleb Williams, who's uber talented. Why don't we just go get him, bring in a new offensive coordinator, should have been a new head coach, because if you're not going to hold on to Fields, why would you keep Eberflus? I think that's the stupidest decision ever, unless you're sold that Eberflus is this godsend, which would be stupid to think that. You get Caleb Williams, you draft you could still get you have the 9th overall pick, get a lineman, get a receiver, get somebody on the defensive end, whatever you want to do. Caleb Williams doesn't need too much help. Look what CJ Stroud's doing this year. You don't need to put the greatest show on turf in front of the guy. Hit the reset button, use that money you would have paid Justin Fields to go out in free agency, get some guys to help this team out, and have your franchise quarterback for the next 15 years.
Yeah, I think it's, I mean, you mentioned everything. I think the only reason as to why, the situation would be difficult is because if Caleb Williams says, no, I don't want to play for you, which, by the way, wouldn't be the worst decision in the world for Caleb Williams to say no to this franchise. They can't get the head coach right. They haven't had, a solid offensive system in a very long time. They haven't had a quarterback. They haven't had a franchise quarterback. I don't think, in their franchise's history, a legitimate franchise quarterback. So I think the only reason as to why this plan would go south is if Caleb Williams tells you to screw off, which, again, I would consider doing if I was Caleb Williams. You do want to go to a situation where you have a chance to succeed. They are not a destination as to which you can succeed. Look at history. It hasn't happened.
That's the thing, though. Like, if you can get Williams, you've been dying for this franchise quarterback. If you're still not sure about Fields, why would you not just get Williams when you've been so thirsty for a franchise quarterback? Like, imagine the turmoil that you put your organization in with sticking with Justin Fields and not getting Caleb Williams. And Caleb Williams turns out to be great, and Justin Fields has a mid-career.
Again, if you question at all what you want to do, like if there's a question like, oh, is Fields the guy? You know your answer. But if you were set in stone, like, oh, Fields does this, this, and this, and Fields was the prospect we thought he was going to be, then you have the conversation. But if you're still questioning whether this guy is a franchise quarterback and you don't want to pay him, you've got your answer right there. You just draft Caleb Williams.
This is not Ryan Poles' draft pick, correct?
No, that's the scary part. Yeah, Poles is not a Poles guy. Fields not a Poles guy.
So if Poles
same thing
ends up going with Caleb Williams, he already made a mistake by keeping Matt Eberflus. To me, keeping Matt Eberflus is a sign we're sticking with Justin Fields. Why would you do, like, Matt Eberflus, the seat was getting hot. We thought he was going to be fired, and I don't think around the league a lot of people think Matt Eberflus is the answer for the Chicago Bears. So if you're going to keep this guy, to me that's saying, okay, Justin Fields, this is already his second head coach. He's about to be on his third offensive coordinator. I don't want to make this kid go through a third head coach. We're going to stick with Eberflus. We still believe in him, blah, blah, blah. If you want Caleb Williams, clean slate, keeping Matt Eberflus, stupid-ass decision.
Well, it's a bad organization, so you can't put anything past them.
In this head coaching cycle, too?
That's the problem, though. This is a bad organization that, if Jim Harbaugh became available, he would look at that franchise. So maybe he's the guy they're waiting for. If Harbaugh officially said, oh, I'm coming to the NFL, maybe they said, okay, screw what we just said. We're firing you, Eberflus. But bad franchises continue to make bad decisions. That's why you see the same teams in the top 5 and the top 10 of the draft every year. There's always 7 or 8 teams that are just always there. So they're one of those teams. And it shouldn't shock you that they're making a really bad decision here. It just shouldn't.
No, not at all. Another team that they're intertwined with, and the reason why they have the number 1 pick, and I didn't tell you to include this in today's topics, but I've been dying to talk about this. If I'm the Carolina Panthers, I don't think this season could have gone any worse, right? Like, everything just, hit the fan. Mm-hmm. Bryce Young looked like crap. Your head coach was fired. You fired your GM. You got really no promising players on that roster right now for the long haul. If I'm the Carolina Panthers, I am calling people about Bryce Young this offseason. I am hitting a complete reboot button because, to me, Bryce Young is not going to develop into his full potential or near his potential within these next 2 or 3 years. And by that point, Bryce Young and Bryce Young's agent and Bryce Young's family are going to be telling him, get the hell out of Carolina, and then you are going to get absolutely nothing in return for your number 1 overall pick. So while you still have the chance to clean up this absolute disaster, you're not going to be able to clean it up completely at all, but you can clean it up a little bit. Trade Bryce Young while his value is high. Whether you could get a pick to pick a quarterback again this year, I would just hold off. I'd just tank it again next year and then take a quarterback next year and, maybe sign a veteran or something and use your pick to get a lineman or whatever this year. get rid of Bryce Young, hit the reboot button, because it is not going to work out the way it is right now.
Yeah, I can't. I wouldn't do that. I would disagree with that just because the value you gave up for this kid, you have to see. You have to see this through.
But
You
see,
can't just get.
I
You
get it.
can't give up after 1 year. You
I
can't. You got to
understand.
see it through.
I understand. But new GM coming in, new head coach coming in. I don't want this dirt on my name of Bryce Young not working out as the new GM. I want to right this ship the way I want to right the ship. I'm getting rid of Bryce Young, and I'm getting whatever draft capital I can for him. That's not my mistake that I made. It's Merlo. Like, please tell me. I know you liked Bryce Young coming out of college, and I didn't really have any criticisms towards the kid either. I thought he was going to be a good quarterback, and he still could. Is he really going to develop into anything in this system with this current situation that he's in? Because that roster is the worst in the NFL.
Well, it depends. I mean, it depends on the moves they make. It's not just about the first round. Obviously, there's other draft picks. You're going to have money to spend. You're going to have to spend money as if you're trying to compete, even though, you're not going to. You need to spend money around this guy so you can see what you have and develop your number one overall pick. There are other moves that have to be made to get your roster to a point where you could seriously evaluate your quarterback. And you also need coaching. I mean, Frank Wright and that coaching staff were clearly a disaster. So I chalk it up to, I think it's a similar situation to the Jaguars, although I think the Panthers roster is in, worse shape than the Jaguars were heading into Trevor Lawrence's second year. But you need to hire a legitimate head coach with some pedigree. You need to hire an offensive staff that knows what they're doing and seriously evaluate your quarterback. I cannot give up on Bryce Young just yet. After what you just gave up for Bryce Young, I can't do it. I can't do it.
I'm trying to think of a good prediction. So my prediction for Carolina's next head coach would be Ben Johnson. I think that makes the most sense.
I think it's too much of a. I don't think Ben Johnson will want that job. I mean, Ben Johnson sat out last year, a couple of situations. I think he actually declined an interview with them. He could have gotten the job last year. He was picky, and I don't think that's that's not a.
It's not a desirable job. It's not. You got a lot of crap to clean up.
And we didn't even mention the owner, who's the worst in sports.
Oh,
so that's also another situation you seriously have to deal with. Yeah, to me, this is listen. I liked Young out of college for sure, but you might end up being right. I see where you're coming from, where this just might not ever work, but I can't just fold. I can't fold yet.
Okay.
I can't fold yet. I have to see it through with Young for a couple more years. Yeah. You might end up being right. It might just be they're a disastrous franchise. They're just terrible.
The past 5 years have just been absolute. Ever since Cam Newton and that Super Bowl run, it's just been a load of crap. It's been awful.
And the owner has a lot to, the new owner right now has a lot to do with why I believe this franchise is probably going to end up being one of the worst in sports.
Yeah.
But that's where we're at with coaches and that carousel. JM, we're a half hour in and we haven't talked about the playoffs. Almost 40 minutes in. We haven't talked about the playoffs. I'm like, are we about to be done with the NFL? No, we're not done with the NFL. We have to talk about the playoffs.
Yeah.
And we have wild card weekend coming up. Interesting. I'm trying to, get my bets for these games, and I like a few money lines here. I'll tell you this. I got one really bold prediction for you. I think the Dallas Cowboys are going to destroy the Green Bay Packers. I mean, destroy them.
Yeah.
Green Bay defensively, I mean, how many times have we joked about Joe Barry? They got nobody on defense at the moment. I think Dak and that offense just going to go crazy, and I think, we'll get to a point where, maybe the Packers will score, a couple of touchdowns, but it'll just become too much with the amount of scoring Dallas is going to do.
Well, that's the thing is, I think either way, when you look at this game, Dallas, I'm locking them in for like 30 points. I think that the only way Green Bay wins this game is if they get into a shootout like we saw in that Seattle game with Dallas on Thursday Night Football. I mean, and I think Seattle ended up losing the game anyways, correct?
They did.
But they made it really close and it turned into a complete shootout. I think that's the best chance the Packers have. You're not going on the road here unless we have a classic Dallas Cowboys like insane choke job here. but you're not going on the road and having Dallas put up 14, 17, 20 points at home. This is going to be an offensive explosion. I'm going to take every over that CD Lamb has in this
Yeah.
game. I think he's going to have an absolute field day. I'm excited to do our top 10 receivers list in the offseason. I'm sure he's going to be very high on my list this year.
Easily top 3 at this point.
Yeah. But if I'm a Packers fan, I'm kind of going into the season, into this game. Of course you want to see your team win, and you're going to root as hard as you can, and you want your team to make a miracle run to the Super Bowl, but win or lose, you got to be proud of the season. You didn't expect this. The season certainly didn't go the way. Like, let's get one thing straight. The Packers as being a playoff team, if I showed you, 9-8 last wild card team in on August 28th, you would have been like, oh, all right, solid year for the Packers. They did not make the playoffs the way they were expected to make the playoffs. We expected the Packers to be a defensive team with a average year out of Jordan Love, maybe. And that is not what happened at all. It actually ended up being that the offense carried the defense in this year. So you got to be optimistic about going into the next. I don't want to act like they got eliminated already, but yeah.
No, I will. I will. Again, this is like, and I'll use, from an example with the Giants. If the Giants ran into the 49ers last year, it's exactly how I would have felt. It's like, all right, well, you didn't get lucky with your first round matchup. You weren't expected to be here. You had a really nice season, but it ends here. I think the Packers, it's different than that because I think you seriously believe you have your franchise quarterback in love with the way he played down the stretch. This is a successful year for the Packers. You have your quarterback. You have your guy. You were a young team. It didn't go your way defensively, and you have to kind of revamp that entire defense for the most part.
Yeah.
Offensively, you just need experience there. They're going to be fine going forward. This is a loss, though. We'll chalk it up as a loss. Another game, and we're going all over the place. Let's now go chronological order, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
In games, and we'll just kind of touch on them. I'm going back and forth in what I believe is going to happen in this Chiefs in this Texans Browns game, because all week I was on Cleveland, and now I'm starting to come back
doing the
on
same exact thing,
and now I'm like, Stroud is great, and maybe the week off for Flacco wasn't as good as we think it would have been. I still think the Browns are going to be too much for this team, but it's a really interesting matchup.
It really is. I mean, you talk about two sides of the spectrum with Stroud versus Flacco, young versus old here. These teams are very differently constructed. The Browns have a great offensive line. The Texans is one of the weaker parts of their team.
Yeah.
The Browns defense is one of the best in the NFL. The Texans defense is basically subpar. I mean, it's been playing better as of late, but
Stingley and Anderson, man, what a 1-2 punch.
Yeah. But the Texans get the benefit of being the home team here, and I agree with you. I've been flip-flopping like nonstop. If you would have asked me this morning, my lock of the week was Browns -2.5. Yeah. Now I'm second guessing myself. My gut still tells me Cleveland, so I'm gonna go with Cleveland. But we're gonna put out our best pick this weekend before the game start, and this game isn't gonna be on my list just because I'm flip-flopping too much.
No, I would agree with that. I think the Browns are going to win. It's tough, though. It's a really tough game. And I think Flacco and this story with Flacco, I think you really, I think the way the board's going to shake up where the Chiefs win and the Bills win.
Yeah.
I think Flacco back to Baltimore, like that is what we want. Like as fans, that's what we want. And that's what I'm I'm rooting for that. And I guess that will reflect in my pick when I make the Browns my money line pick.
And listen, I know CJ Stroud has been an amazing rookie, and I don't doubt the kid for a second. He had a big performance last week against Indianapolis in a game that they had to win. But let's keep in mind that this is the kid's first playoff game. And, the Browns certainly have more experience here. They've been in the playoffs about 3 years ago. They were in, decently recently. So with Flacco's experience, and I think that defense is just going to terrorize the Texans a little bit. So I know that they lost by a lot without Stroud, so you can't really account for it. But, I think no matter what quarterback was in that game against Cleveland earlier in the year, I think Cleveland's winning that game anyways, and I think we see a repeat of history here.
A lot of stats will back you up, telling you not to take the rookie quarterback in his first playoff start. I mean, that's obvious. Another start that's going to involve a quarterback making his first playoff start. That's Tua and the Dolphins. Do you see the weather forecast for this game?
I thought everybody was like exaggerating, and I literally just went on the weather app and looked up Kansas City,
My
and I was
favorite
like,
app.
"Oh, okay, yeah, no, it's real." Wow.
Dangerous cold. The National Weather Service is putting alerts out. You can get to the game for very cheap for Arrowhead Stadium, or it's not even Arrowhead anymore. Is it called Arrowhead?
Yeah, it's like GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium or something like that.
BS. They got to make more money.
Yeah,
Whatever. The tickets are cheap, like $55 get in, which is nothing for a Chiefs playoff game at home against, an interesting opponent. It's a good team. Obviously you want to tell you, we can talk about the Dolphins being frauds all they want. There are definitely a hot ticket, the Dolphins, to go see them play. And, Hill going back to Kansas City, that's obviously going to be a huge draw for Chief fans. So you can get in the stadium cheap. I think this is easy, right? Like the Chiefs are going to roll here. They should roll against the Dolphins, who blow the AFC East.
I've been, every chance I get, I've been kicking them down, but it's a home playoff game. It's going to be the only home playoff game most likely that they play.
Right.
And the weather, if we're talking 40 degrees in Kansas City here, I'm flirting with the Dolphins to win this game, but the way the weather conditions are here, I think it's such a disadvantage for Miami, obviously. Now, one thing that might be a surprise that we maybe are overlooking right now. When we think of Miami, we think about all the speed, and we think about, the way they like to just air it out, and Tyreek Hill scoring those 70-yard touchdowns. Miami's been good at running the football this year. That's something to keep in mind. And they've been able to run it in between the tackles. I know they don't have a powerhouse back. Raheem Mostert is known more for his legs. They might be able to run the ball against this Kansas City team.
It's crazy the turn we've done on Miami, because that was my argument early on about them being a serious contender. And I've fallen off of them. I tried telling you at the beginning of the year, look at them. They run between the tackles. They can, they play big boy football a little bit when they want to. So funny how we've kind of flipped on them. I'm not out on them. I think the weather is too much. You can tell it's going to be cold. Yeah, sure. This is too much of an advantage here for a team that's used to playing in the cold. And I don't think any player in this game is going to be comfortable in the cold that we're going to see in this game. But yeah, it's dangerously cold, and I think it's a huge advantage to the home team.
Short sleeves, any player doing it, lunatic. I don't want to hear the toughness. Wearing short sleeves.
I think Tyreek will be in one.
In -1 degrees with like a negative 30-degree wind chill or whatever they're saying. Lunatic mental facility now, immediately.
Yeah, I think Tyreek Hill will do it. We'll see though.
Probably. I think it's a battle of frauds, to put it pretty blankly. I think it's just two frauds going at it, and I think, I was actually getting a couple people were asking me who I would take right now is just my Super Bowl pick. I guess we're gonna segue into it because it's the next game in chronological order. But right now, I'm leaning Buffalo to come out of the AFC.
Yeah, I love Buffalo to come out of the AFC. I got a ton of money riding on them to be the team out of the AFC. I think Josh Allen's playing the best football out of any quarterback in the league. And that game against Miami, man, and that, to win the division, which is unbelievable. Unbelievable what he was able to do in that game. That third down run, I saw my boy Colin Cowherd post it, and I didn't actually see it. I got to go to the bathroom for the 3rd and 13 run that ended up getting called anyway because of a penalty. He tweeted out right after that, but he said, that's the best play I've seen a quarterback make all year. Then I went back and rewatched it without seeing the tweet. and thought the same exact
Yeah.
thing that he did,
Yeah.
that was one of the more impressive plays I've seen from a quarterback in a very long time. Josh Allen is my number one quarterback in the entire league right now. He's
Yeah.
number one.
How can he not be?
And I love him. He's my favorite player in the league. I
Yeah.
can't get over Josh Allen and these Buffalo Bills. I think they're going to go to the Super Bowl.
Take
And
it
if
easy.
there's any team that can beat San Francisco, I think it's Buffalo because they have the best player on the field no matter what. On any side of the ball there. They have the best player on the field.
Yeah. I mean, makes you think this whole time we're talking about Pat Mahomes and, how great he is and how he's in a league of his own. Have we just been sliding Josh Allen? Because I'll tell you what, Mahomes has had some success in the postseason. Certainly, he's got 2 Super Bowl rings already. But you look at Patrick Mahomes' numbers in the postseason and you look at Josh Allen's, pretty damn hard to make the argument that Josh Allen's had a worse postseason career than Pat Mahomes. His numbers are crazy in the postseason.
Yeah, Josh Allen's the only guy that I could say that, could potentially take him over. I mean, Burrow has come close. Burrow can't do what Mahomes even can do with his legs, and obviously Allen, who's a weapon with his legs, really like a running back for them as well.
Yeah.
So adding the running game with James Cook has definitely helped Buffalo this year, and you've seen that turn in Allen's play even from early on when the turnovers were kind of a little bit of an issue. Although I don't worry about turnovers with Allen, but even going back to last season where they didn't have a run game, now they do. It's a big thing for Josh Allen, and yeah, they're my team to come out of the AFC. The other game we didn't talk about on Sunday, that was
Wait,
the
hold on.
Oh, sorry.
Love the Bills. My pick right now to make it out of the AFC. This is pending TJ Watt's availability. If TJ Watt is playing, I'm pretty sure my pick of the week is going to be Steelers plus 10.
Oh,
I think they're going to keep it close. I think the Bills win. I think 10 points is too much in a playoff game.
thought he was out.
What?
Thought he was out. Thought they ruled him out already.
As of my lunch break today, I saw that he was still available, or questionable, or whatever designation they gave. But that was about like 8 hours ago, so I could be wrong.
No, I thought I saw it early in the week that he wasn't playing. I could definitely be wrong though. Yeah, it's
20. Yeah, I'm an idiot. 23 hours ago, TJ Watt to miss wildcard playoff game. So scratch that. Never mind. Bills minus 10 hammer.
I'm just not going to play it. I'm not going to play the game.
Yeah.
I don't like playing big spreads, and I always side to the underdog. Mason
I assume
Rudolph's
you're going
a
to take
dog.
Dallas then, because they're at 7.
Oh, I love Dallas. I love Dallas.
Yeah.
And I like the Rams.
Okay.
I know the Rams are going to be the most public dog of the week. I don't care. Let's talk about them going back to Detroit.
Like 95%.
Yeah, it's going to be crazy.
95% on the Rams. It's crazy.
It's going to be nuts. You're getting them as a dog. I think I am of the belief that the Lions are the Vikings from last season, that they are just frauds. And defensively, they're a little bit better, and they got more of a pass rush. And I don't even want to say I like the coach better because I really like O'Connell, but they are not that good.
No.
And I think we've seen that down the stretch, that they're not that good. But I think the Rams are playing their better football. I like the coach better. I like the quarterback better. I might even say I like a couple of the receivers. I definitely like a couple of the receivers, but I take their receivers over the Lions receivers. I like a lot about this Rams team.
I don't know what they're feeding those receivers in LA, but you got Puka Nacua out here. We love to talk about Justin Jefferson and Jamar Chase and the amazing rookie seasons that they had. Puka Nacua just broke every freaking record for a rookie wide receiver. I mean, how is that even possible?
Yeah, with the guys we've seen lately. I think they just fed him Matthew Stafford, JM. I think that's all it is.
Yeah. The storyline here is crazy. I know that Flacco going back to Baltimore could potentially happening is really cool. I think this is cooler. I mean, the seeing the way that Stafford for years in Detroit, they could never get it done, and he was just thought to be, oh my God, he's in this awful situation, and they got to get him out of there, and he's such a good quarterback. And then he goes to LA, and they're like, wow, everybody was right. He wins the Super Bowl in his first year there. It was all Detroit's fault this whole time. Jared Goff couldn't get it done in LA. He wasn't the right guy for that team. He was holding them back. Then Goff goes to Detroit. LA sucks last year. Detroit is on the come up this year now. They're flirting with the 1 seed at one point. They're hosting a home playoff game for the first time in a while. And who the hell is their number one opponent? The, kick to the curb in the offseason, had no shot at the playoffs. LA Rams with Matt Stafford playing Jared Goff and the Lions on the road. It's ridiculous. It's crazy.
It's a perfect situation. It's exactly what the NFL wants. That's why it's Sunday Night Football. I'm looking forward to it. It's the number one game I'm looking forward to.
Crap.
What?
The Oklahoma City Thunder, first of all, they won 139-77, and they had a 61-point lead going into the fourth.
Oh, God.
And then they just played even basketball. So they won by 61 points.
That's good. Yeah.
Good,
Who
good
did they
for the
play?
Blazers. Good for the Blazers.
Yeah.
They just got their asses handed to them by the Knicks, and then they do that. Good for them.
Yeah, that's good. It's a good situation. Trade Dame. Back to football.
Next game. What are we up to now? Are we still staying on this game?
No, I'm done with that. I'm very excited to see what happens. I think it's a perfect matchup for the Rams. Yeah, I don't know about shootout. 27-24, does that count as a shootout?
No.
No.
I'm thinking more like 34-31.
No. Yeah, I'll say no shootout, but still a good game and some scoring. All right, let's move on. Last game, we've got the Bucks and the Eagles. Two frauds. I mean, Jesus Christ. I think Philly's going to run away with the game. I do, and I understand the Buck love to a degree, but, I do think there is something to saying, and I don't think it's a good excuse, but Philly hasn't played many good teams down the stretch, after their gauntlet of a schedule. So, they've had a few games here where they were kind of, they had the Seahawks, the Giants, the Cardinals, and then the Giants again. They haven't the last month and a half, they haven't been playing legitimate teams. I think there's something to playing down to your opponent. I think they're feeling the pressure at this point. I'm not saying this team is going to go to the NFC Championship game because I think they're going to lose in the divisional round. But, their magic dust has kind of run out, and I do think they're going to beat the Buccaneers because I just don't think the Buccaneers are playing good football. I think Baker's banged up, and he's not playing well, last few games. I think this is kind of an easy spot to take the Eagles here and lay the number, and it'll be 2-touchdown game.
I'm going to disagree with you on this one.
Jen, you flip on your birds, man.
I was
can't believe that.
We're talking about the switch ups. My glorious birds. I'm out. I'm out on them. It's ugly. It's an ugly situation in Philly right now. Nick Sirianni is, week by week looks like less and less of a coach. And you see what Shane Steichen did in his first year with Indianapolis and almost winning that division. And you see what Jonathan Gannon did in Arizona and, keeping them competitive and beating Nick Sirianni on the road in his first time back in Philadelphia. So it doesn't look good. The offense looks awful. I don't know if Hurts is hurt. I don't know if, he's just bad. I don't know if it's both. I don't know what's going on. That defense is deteriorating. The secondary's bad. The linebackers are bad. The defensive line is bad. They're dropping Hassan Reddick in the coverage and Josh Sweat in the cut. They're just pulling all the tricks out. And they just have how many times you do a QB draw on 3rd and 8 and think that it's going to work? I mean, everything is just like a shit show right now with the Birds. And, I know the Bucks, I know Baker's banged up, and I know they haven't played their best football in over these past couple of weeks. I know this isn't the way football works. But earlier in the season, the Bucks played the same exact scenario at home, Monday Night Football against the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Eagles beat them. But the Eagles didn't play their best football. And what did we say the entire year about this Eagles team is, they still haven't played their best football. They still haven't played their best football. Turns out that was their best football. They're not playing their best football right now at all. They're not playing good football at all. And I think that the Bucks are due for a solid game here. And they're a team that is also, like I talked about the Dolphins, you don't think about it, they can run the football. Rachaad White had a really, really good year for the Bucks, and they can run the ball. And I think they're going to give the Eagles some fits at home. I think their defense is going to play pretty good. And I expect it to be a very, very close game. And I do think the Bucks are actually going to pull it out.
The Eagles do one thing well, And I think maybe the only thing you could give Sirianni credit for because he discovered it and he runs it so much, and that's a tush push. It's the only thing they do very well at the moment. So yeah, this isn't a well coached team offensively, defensively, and then you ask yourself, what does Nick Sirianni bring to the table? I don't think it's much. He's more of like a CEO kind of guy, like Harbaugh and other guys that are considered CEO guys. Not offense, not defense, but yeah, I don't know what exactly Sirianni brings to the table here. It's not much.